The man looked at him. The gaze was heavy, detached. There was neither malice nor joy in it. There was something like contempt, but not for Alexander, for the whole situation, for the whole world where such things were possible. "Are you Alexander?" the stranger asked. His voice was low, flat, emotionless. "I am. And who are you?" "It doesn't matter. Your wife forgot these." He held out a bag. While Alexander tried to understand what was happening, the stranger walked away. The apartment smelled of winter and calm. Not calm, stillness. That deep, almost tangible stillness that settles in homes after children have grown up and flown away, leaving parents alone in a spacious, suddenly huge cage of memories. Alexander came home from the plant around 6, as always. He took off his boots in the entryway, carefully placing them on the worn-down rug, left next to right, just as his mother had taught him. He hung his heavy jacket with the Detroit steel patch on the hook. He'd worked there as a shift foreman for 28 years. His movements were practiced, economical, unhurried. His body remembered the ritual better than his mind. From the kitchen came the smell of fried potatoes with onions. That meant Helen was already home. He walked down the hall, rubbing his palm over the stubble on his chin. At the kitchen doorway he stopped, standing for a second, watching. Helen stood at the stove with her back to him, stirring something in a pan. She wore the same gray house pants, the same loose sweater as always. But something was off. Maybe her hair? Her hair, always pulled back in a practical bun, was loose today, falling over her shoulders. Dark chestnut with reddish highlights that he used to love studying by the light of the desk lamp. "You're home," he said quietly. She started, turned around. A smile appeared instantly, practiced, like his movements in the hall. "Alex, I didn't hear you. Dinner's almost ready." "Sit down. The kettle just boiled." He nodded, walked to the table, and lowered himself onto a chair. His joints creaked with a familiar, painless sound. 53 made itself known not through pain, but through sounds. A slight stiffness in his knees, a dull click in his back when he bent. "How was your day?" Helen asked, spooning potatoes onto plates. "The usual. The third lathe broke down again. Electronics. We're waiting for the techs Monday. And yours?" For an instant she froze, plate in hand. Then she smoothly set it in front of him. "Fine. The meeting ran long. Optimization, year-end reports, dull stuff." Optimize. And there's nobody left to do the work," Alexander grumbled, forking a piece of potato. "Kids come in, a month later they quit. No patience." Helen sat across from him, picked up her fork, but didn't start eating. She stared somewhere past him, at the dark window where snow was slowly falling. "We've got young people at work too," she said thoughtfully. "Such bright girls. They wear skirts above the knee, lots of makeup. They laugh loudly. Outside it's November gloom, but for them it's summer." There was a strange note in her voice. Not envy, no. More like detached surprise, as if she were watching aliens. Alexander looked at her more closely. Yes, something had changed. Not just her hair. Her eyebrows seemed shaped differently, and something glistened on her lips. Lipstick. She hadn't worn lipstick at home in 10 years. "Did you put on makeup?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. She started, ran a hand through her hair. No, I just didn't have time to wash it off after work. We had a client presentation today. Had to look presentable." He nodded, believing and not believing at the same time. Trust was the foundation of their life. 30 years of marriage, 2 children, Steve, now an engineer in New York, and Katie, who became a lawyer and stayed in Pittsburgh, but in her own neighborhood with her young husband. A foundation of shared years, common worries, quiet joys, and loud fights that always ended in reconciliation in that same bed they'd bought after the wedding. After dinner, they moved to the living room, as always. The TV murmured some series. They stared at the screen without seeing it. Alexander flipped through a newspaper. Helen knitted, or pretended to knit. The needles clicked rarely. She looked more often out the window or at her phone lying beside her on the couch. Sometimes her lips moved, as if she were having a silent conversation with someone. "Helen," he finally said, putting down the paper. "Is something wrong?" No, just tired." "Your company party is coming up, right? New Year's Eve?" She flinched, as if he'd pricked her with a pin. "Yes, the 31st, at the Waldorf Astoria." She paused. "I don't even know if I should go." "Why? You always go." "I used to go," she corrected quietly. "But now, I don't know. Everything feels different. Everyone's young and lively, and I sit in the corner like a gray mouse, sipping juice, watching them dance." "So go dance," he said, trying to sound encouraging. "At my age?" She laughed, but there was bitterness in it. 52, Alex. Half a century, if you round it. Sometimes I feel like life passed me by. Work, home, home, work. The kids are grown, and we're just frozen. Like those nesting dolls on the shelf, painted outside, empty inside." He looked at her, and something unpleasant, cold, stirred in his soul. Not fear, a premonition. Like before a thunderstorm when the air grows thick and heavy. "What, you want to shake things up?" he asked, quoting a phrase she'd used years ago during their first crisis after Katie left. "And why not?" She set aside her knitting, turned to face him. Her eyes glittered with an unhealthy, feverish gleam. "You only live once, Alex. I look at those girls at work. Nothing phases them. They fall in love, break up, travel, photograph restaurant food." "I don't even remember the last time I was in a restaurant that wasn't a company party. When was the last time you invited me anywhere?" The blow was unexpected and precise. Alexander leaned back in his chair. "Invited? We went to the movies last year." "The movies?" she snorted. "We went to some action flick you wanted to see, sat there munching popcorn, then rode home in silence. That's not a date, Alex. It's a ritual." He was silent. Anger, small and sharp as a splinter, lodged under his ribs. But he was a master at suppressing anger. 30 years had taught him. "Fine," he said calmly. "Go to the party, unwind, dance. Just don't overdo the champagne. Remember how your head hurt the year before last?" She smiled again, but this time softer. "I remember. Okay, I'll go, I guess. Gotta ring in the new year somehow." "We could ring it in together," he offered without much hope. "Here? In front of the TV?" She shook her head. "No, Alex. I've had enough New Year's Eves like that. 30 of them in a row." She stood, took her empty cup, and went to the kitchen. Alexander remained sitting, watching her back. There was something new in her walk, a springiness, an almost girlish lightness. Or was he imagining it? He pushed away the dark, sticky feeling. Midlife crisis. He'd read about it. In women, it shows up later, She wants to prove to herself that she's still young, desirable. It'll pass. He just had to wait it out, be patient, like with that third lathe. Half an hour later she returned, now in her robe, makeup free. Gray mouse. His gray mouse. She sat beside him, leaned into his shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Nerves, work, everything's getting on my nerves." "It's okay," he stroked her hair. It smelled of the same shampoo as 20 years ago, apples. "Things will work out." But as he held her, he felt something inside him clench into a cold, tight knot. As if he were holding not his wife, but a stranger who was only pretending to be the woman he'd loved all his life. The following days flowed as usual, but in the familiar current there was a crack. Helen did start paying more attention to her appearance, not much, not flamboyantly, but noticeably. She bought new lipstick, not red, coral. "On sale," she said, "almost free." She ordered a dress online for the party, showed it to him, black, elegant, but with an open back. "Too much?" she asked. "Fine," he mumbled, eyes on the TV. She also began staying late at work more often. "Meeting, have to finish the report, covering for a colleague." He nodded, didn't question. Trust. It was their fortress, and he wasn't about to be the first to make a breach in the wall. But at night, when she slept and he lay staring at the ceiling, the premonition returned. It came in images. Helen dancing with a stranger, Helen laughing too loudly, Helen looking into another man's eyes. He waved it away like a pesky fly. Nonsense. His Helen, mother of his children. She wasn't capable. Not her. 2 days before New Year's Eve, she brought home a small box from a lingerie store. "What's that?" he asked, glancing at the bag she tried to sneak into the bedroom. "Just a little something," she blushed. "For the party, to feel more confident." "Let me see." Reluctantly, she took out the box, opened it. Inside lay black lace panties, expensive ones, sheer, with silk ribbons. "Pretty," he said, and his voice sounded strange, as if someone else's. "You don't mind?" She looked at him from under her brows like a guilty little girl. "Mind what? It's your body, your underwear." "Alex, don't be like that," she pouted. "I just want to feel like a woman, once a year." He turned away. "Wear them in good health, just don't catch cold." That night they slept with their backs to each other. Alexander tossed for a long time, listening to her even breathing. And a thought, black and slippery, crept into his mind. Who is that lingerie for? Herself? Or for someone else's eyes? In the morning, he was ashamed of that thought. Spit on it. Can't sink that low. Trust. It was all they had left besides their shared history, and he clung to it like an anchor in the coming storm. On December 31st, Helen left for the party around 5. She spent a long time in front of the hall mirror, adjusting her dress, putting things in and out of her small, glittery clutch. "Beautiful," Alexander said, watching from the side. She truly was beautiful. The black dress hugged her still shapely hips. Her bare back looked vulnerable and feminine. Her hair was done in an elaborate updo. Her eyes shimmered with sparkly shadow. She smelled not of her usual apples, but of something heavy, oriental, with notes of patchouli and sandalwood. New perfume. "A gift from work," she'd said. They all chipped in. He nodded, not believing a word. "What time will you be back?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Well, not too late. It goes till midnight, dinner, toasts. Probably around 1. Did you call a cab? I will, don't worry. She came over, kissed his cheek. Her lips were sticky with lipstick. He felt a foreign, sweetish taste on his skin. Happy New Year, Alex. Her voice trembled. There was something final in it? Or was he imagining again? Happy New Year, Helen. Have fun. He didn't say, take care. The words stuck in his throat. The door closed. The apartment swallowed the silence, suddenly hollow as a tomb. Alexander stood in the hall, listening to the click of her heels fade. Then he sighed, went to the kitchen. Made himself a sandwich with bologna, poured tea. He wasn't hungry, but he needed to keep his hands busy. At 8, Katie called, wishing him a Happy New Year. Her voice was cheerful, ringing with a different, happy life.
Dad, how are you and Mom? Getting ready? Is Mom all dressed up?
Mom went to her office party, he said, forcing his voice to sound normal. And I'm here, like an old dog on the couch.
Dad, why didn't you go somewhere together?
Mom wanted to have fun. The TV's company enough for me. They talked another 10 minutes. Then Steve called from New York. The conversation was shorter, masculine, restrained.
Got it, Dad. Well, take it easy. Happy New Year.
After the calls, the silence pressed down again, even heavier. Alexander turned on the TV. Some concert was on, performers mugging, lights flashing. He stared without seeing. Time crawled like molasses. At 10, he tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. He got up, walked through the apartment, went into the bedroom. On the bed lay the discarded dress, the long blue one Helen had worn to last year's party. On the nightstand stood her photo from their youth, laughing, 2 braids, wearing his old shirt. He picked up the frame, ran his finger over the glass. Where was that girl? Where had she gone? Or was she just hiding under layers of years, worries, disappointments, now trying to break out through black lace and a bare back? At 11, he was back in the kitchen, drinking his 3rd cup of tea. Outside, firecrackers began popping. Fireworks scattered lights. The city hummed, rejoiced, and he sat alone at the table, feeling the cold blanket of solitude wrap around him. He watched the ball drop on TV. The president said something pompous. Alexander didn't listen. He raised his cup of tea and said quietly, "Happy New Year, old man," and drank. The tea was cold, bitter. After midnight, he tried again to sleep. Lay down on the couch in the living room, covered with a blanket. Sleep wouldn't come. But thoughts came, obsessive as a swarm of hungry mosquitoes. Where was she now? Drinking champagne? Dancing? With whom? Was she laughing? Or maybe she was already on her way home. Then why didn't she call? He checked his phone. No calls, no messages. Silence. At 2 in the morning, the anxiety that had been slumbering somewhere deep in his mind rose. Not suddenly, but slowly, like a black, oily wave. It rose from his stomach to his throat, squeezing his breath. Alexander sat up, turned on the light. The bright chandelier stabbed his eyes. He picked up the phone again, dialed her number. The call went to voicemail, long beeps cutting the silence like a hacksaw. She didn't answer. Her phone's on silent, he told himself aloud. The restaurant's noisy, she can't hear. He sent a text. Helen, you okay? The message remained unread. The wave of anxiety rose higher. Now it was icy, paralyzing. He got up and began pacing the room. His steps were heavy, as if his feet were filled with lead. Over and over he constructed logical chains. They partied late, went somewhere to continue. Her battery died. Or she got drunk, fell asleep at a colleague's. Or she was in an accident. The last thought made him stop, press his forehead to the cold window glass. No, impossible. God forbid. He called again. Again voicemail. Then he started calling hospitals. First the ambulance service, then the ERs of nearby hospitals. The voices on the other end were sleepy, annoyed. No one by that name. Not admitted. He hung up after the fifth call. His hands trembled. He clenched them into fists to stop the shaking. It didn't help. By 4 a.m, he knew she wasn't coming home that night. The knowledge came not intellectually, but with his whole being, every cell. It settled inside him like a heavy, cold weight in his gut. He stopped calling, stopped pacing, sat in the chair, staring at the dark window. Outside, dawn was slowly breaking. New year, new day, new life, or the end of the old one? He didn't sleep, sat watching the snow turn from black to grey to white, watching the city wake up slowly, reluctantly after the holiday. And with each passing minute, the weight in his gut grew heavier, and inside him a black, bottomless emptiness spread like space. She returned around 1 p.m. Alexander heard the key in the lock, uncertain, scratching, as if she'd forgotten how to use it. He didn't get up from the chair, sat staring at the door. She entered cautiously, as if afraid of waking someone, saw him, and froze in the doorway. Alex, you're awake. Her voice was hoarse, as if she had a cold, or from drinking. She stood gripping the doorframe as if afraid she might fall. Her dress was wrinkled, as if it had been crumpled and thrown in a corner. One strap had slipped off her shoulder. Her hairdo had collapsed, hair hanging in strings, stuck to her neck in places. Her makeup was smeared. Eyeshadow had pooled into bruised circles under her eyes. Lipstick was gone, except for red traces at the corners of her mouth, like a clown's. But that wasn't what struck him. It was her eyes. They glittered feverishly, but darted, unable to settle on him. They looked at him, past him, at the floor, back at him, and then bounced away like rubber balls. We had such a wonderful time, she began, not moving from the spot. The words came in a rapid-fire burst, hurried, disjointed. You can't imagine, Alex, what an evening it was. Music, everyone dancing, and the CEO gave such a touching speech. Then we went to Marina's, you remember, from accounting. She lives nearby. We continued there. Champagne, snacks. I got so drunk I fell asleep right on her couch. I just woke up. My head, oh my God. She talked, and with each word the story became more cardboard, more absurd. Alexander listened in silence. He breathed in the air she brought with her. The smell of wine. Yes, that was there. The smell of cigarettes. She didn't smoke, so someone had been smoking near her. And something else. Someone else's cologne. Sharp, masculine, with notes of leather and something chemical. It hung around her like poison mist. He looked at her hands. They trembled. She tried to fix her hair, but her fingers wouldn't obey, tangling in the strands. And everyone was so young at heart, Alex. Just like 20. I even danced, can you believe it? Danced. She tried to smile, but the smile came out crooked, a pathetic grimace. Alexander nodded once, slowly. "I see," he said. His voice was strangely calm, as if not his own. "Head hurt?" "Terribly." She shook her head, and suddenly her face twisted in real, physical pain. "I think I'll lie down." "Go ahead." She walked past him, trailing a cloud of foreign smells and lies. He heard her turn on the water in the bathroom, the long shower. Washing off the traces of the night. Traces of another man. He stayed in the chair. Inside was emptiness, but now it was filled with something heavy and solid, as if his organs had been replaced with blocks of ice. He thought about her eyes. They'd avoided his. Why? Because she was ashamed? Or because they still held reflections of another face, another body, another night? Half an hour later, she emerged from the bathroom in her robe, wet hair. Her face was clean, makeup free, and that made it look naked, vulnerable. She went to the kitchen. He heard her pour water. Then she came back and sat on the couch across from him. "Alex," she began. He raised his eyes to her, silent. "You're not angry that I didn't call? My phone died, I swear, and Marina didn't have a charger." "It's okay," he said. "Glad you're alive and well." The sentence sounded too normal, too calm. She felt it, tensed. "You're really not mad?" "What's there to be mad about?" he asked, and for the first time his voice carried a thin, razor-sharp edge. "You had a good time. We're young at heart. What's wrong with that?" She fell silent, shrank. She understood. She understood he didn't believe a single word, that the wall of silence he'd built between them was already standing, high and cold as an iceberg. I'm going to sleep," she mumbled and hurried into the bedroom. The door closed. Alexander was alone. He went to the window, pressed his forehead to the cold glass. Outside, the day was gray, sunless. Snow kept falling, slow, indifferent. He stood there a long time, until the glass warmed from his breath. Then he stepped back, went to the kitchen. On the table lay her clutch, that glittery one. He picked it up, light, almost empty, opened it. Inside, a small mirror, lipstick, keys, phone. He took the phone. The screen was clean, no cracks. Pressed the button. It turned on, battery at 43%. Not dead. He put the phone back, closed the clutch. His hands didn't shake. The shaking was gone, replaced by something else. Cold, hard, implacable. He understood that the life he'd had yesterday was over. A new one had begun, and he didn't know what would be in it, besides this icy weight inside. The week after New Year's became like living in an aquarium with frozen water. They moved through the apartment slowly, carefully, as if afraid of touching each other and shattering the fragile ice beneath them. Conversations were reduced to the bare minimum. Pass the salt. Buy bread? Take out the trash tomorrow. She tried to restore things as they were. Tried too hard. On the third day, coming home from work, she brought him a gift, an expensive electric razor he'd mentioned wanting 6 months ago. "Here," she said, placing the box in front of him on the table. "You wanted one." He looked at the box, then at her. "Thanks." Nothing more. He didn't ask where the money came from, didn't ask why now, just pushed the box aside and went back to his paper. She stood there, waiting for something. A smile, a hug, any sign. Didn't get it. Went to the kitchen, slamming the door. She started cooking his favorite meals, homemade pierogies, beef stroganoff, potato pancakes. He ate in silence, gave brief praise. Good. That was all. He didn't look her in the eye. And when their gazes did meet, she was the first to look away, a guilty, frightened shadow crossing her face. He watched. That was now his main occupation. He watched her every move, every gesture, like a detective gathering evidence against himself. And evidence accumulated. She looked at her phone too often. Before, she'd leave it on the hall table and forget it till morning. Now the phone was an extension of her. It lay beside her on the couch, on the kitchen table. She took it to the bathroom. And every time a call or message came, she'd flinch, grab it, turn her back, or go into another room. She hid the screen like a criminal hides a knife. One evening, while she was washing dishes, the phone vibrated on the table. Alexander, sitting opposite, saw a notification flash. The sender's name was hidden, but the preview was visible. Remembering your hands. He gave no sign he'd seen, continued drinking tea. She, hearing the vibration, spun around, saw him looking in her direction, rushed to the phone, snatched it, stuffed it in her robe pocket. "Who was that?" he asked calmly. "Oh, some spam," she babbled. "I'm so sick of these newsletters." "Spam about hands?" he inquired, and that same steel was in his voice. She blushed like a schoolgirl. "It's some poem, I don't know, I'll delete it." She pulled out the phone, tapped something quickly, put it back. Her hands shook. He didn't ask further, but the watching continued. On the fourth day, he looked in the washing machine while she was at work. Among the ordinary laundry, he saw that black lace lingerie. It had been washed, but on the dark fabric, white spots showed. Not from detergent, no. Spots of a different nature. He picked up the panties, held them to the light. Yes, they were traces. Traces of another's passion, another's body. He dropped the garment as if burned, wiped his hands on a towel, long and thoroughly, though he'd touched nothing dirty. That same evening, as she was hanging the laundry, he asked, "Like the new lingerie?" She turned, holding his shirt. "What?" "The one you bought for the party. Black." "Oh, yeah, it's fine." She turned away, hanging the shirt on a hanger. "Comfortable." "And durable," he added. "Stains wash out?" She froze. Her shoulders tensed, becoming sharp under her thin sweater. "What stains?" Her voice was thin as wire. "Well, sweat, makeup. Parties get hot." She turned slowly. Her face was white as paper. "Yes, they washed out. Everything washed out." She couldn't hold his gaze, looked down. And at that moment he saw on her neck, just below her left ear, a small red mark. Not a bruise, a mark. A trace of another's mouth. He'd seen such marks on her skin long ago, when they were first dating and passion was as uncontrollable as a spring flood. His heart clenched so hard he nearly cried out. But he held it in, silently stood, walked into the bedroom, closed the door behind him, sat on the bed, stared at the wall. Inside, something tore, screamed, beat against his ribs like a bird in a cage. But outwardly he was calm, calm and cold as the ice that had frozen their life. He realized their marriage had become a thin glass wall, and he heard it cracking. With each day, each glance, each hidden message, the crack grew longer, deeper, and soon the wall would shatter into pieces, cutting everything that remained. On January 9th, an ordinary winter evening, the wall gave its first visible crack. Helen was late from work. "Overtime," she said on the phone. "Urgent report, I'll have to stay late." Her voice was steady, but tension laced it, as if she were reading from a script. Alexander grunted into the phone, though she couldn't see, and tossed it on the couch. He was alone. Made himself scrambled eggs, ate them standing at the kitchen window, then washed the dishes, sat with a book. But couldn't read. Words jumped before his eyes, refusing to form meaning.
He put the book aside, turned on the TV. News. Something about politics, prices. He stared without seeing. Suddenly the doorbell rang, sharp, insistent. Alexander frowned. Who at this hour? Usually no one came without warning. Maybe a neighbor? Or... His heart skipped. Maybe she'd forgotten our key. He went to the door, looked through the peephole. A stranger stood outside. Young, around 30, dressed simply but expensively. A dark coat with no logos, good jeans, sneakers that cost half of Alexander's monthly salary. His face was pale, tired, not from physical fatigue, from something else, from an inner dirt that couldn't be washed away. Alexander opened the door, keeping the chain on. "Yes?" The man looked at him. The gaze was heavy, detached. There was neither malice nor joy in it. There was something like contempt, but not for Alexander, for the whole situation, for the whole world where such things were possible. "Are you Alexander?" the stranger asked. His voice was low, flat, emotionless. "I am. And who are you?" "It doesn't matter. Here, your wife forgot these at the party." The man held out through the gap in the door an ordinary paper grocery bag. The bag wasn't heavy, but as Alexander mechanically took it, he felt a strange, almost mystical weight. "What is this?" Alexander managed to ask, but the stranger was already turning away. He quickly went down the stairs, not waiting for the elevator. His steps were firm, clipped, as if he couldn't get away from that doorstep fast enough. Alexander stood in the hallway with the bag in his hands, staring into the dark stairwell. Then he slowly closed the door, clicked the lock. The bag in his hand felt hot, though it was cold from the outside frost. He went into the living room, set the bag on the coffee table, sat opposite, staring at it. An ordinary bag, white with a blue grocery store logo, folded over at the top like a little sack. What could be inside? Clothes? Documents? A party favor? But then why did that man... Why did he look as if he'd brought not a forgotten item, but a bomb? His heart beat slowly, heavily, like a bell tolling before disaster. Alexander knew that in this moment his life would split into before and after, and what lay in that bag would determine what after looked like. He sat like that for maybe 10 minutes, then got up, went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank it in one gulp. His hands trembled slightly, but it wasn't nervous trembling. It was the tension before leaping into the unknown. Back in the living room, he sat and pulled the bag toward him, opened the top, looked inside. At first, he didn't understand. Inside lay a neatly folded item of black fabric. He took it out. The fabric was thin, airy, lacy. He unfolded it. It was those black panties, the ones she'd bought for New Year's. He sat there, holding that scrap of chiffon and lace. The world shrank to the size of that thing. Everything else, the room, the house, the city, blurred, became background. He smelled something. Not laundry detergent. Her perfume. Heavy, oriental, patchouli and sandalwood. The perfume gifted from work. It had soaked into the fabric, embedded itself, like a memory of that night. And then he understood. Understood everything. Understood why the man had looked that way. Understood why he'd shown such contempt. This wasn't just a forgotten item. It was a message, evidence, a proof, and possibly an act of revenge. But whose? On the stranger's part, or someone else's? Alexander's hands no longer trembled. They were stone steady. He placed the lingerie back in the bag, but didn't close it. Stared at the black lace lying on the white paper. The contrast was cruel, like a knife wound. Then his eyes fell to the bottom of the bag. In one corner lay another object, small, rectangular. A flash drive. Ordinary, blue, with no markings, the kind sold on every corner. Alexander pulled out the flash drive. It was light, almost weightless, but he felt its weight. The weight of all the truth that might be on it, or all the lies. He sat there holding the flash drive in one hand, staring at the bag with the lingerie, and felt something cold and methodical awakening inside him. Not rage. Rage would have been simpler. This was something else. Resolve. Cold, merciless resolve to know everything to the end, however terrible that end might be. He stood, took the bag and the flash drive, walked to the study, a small room with an old computer bought years ago for Steve when he was in school. The computer hummed, booting up. Alexander sat before the monitor, inserted the flash drive into the port. A window appeared showing the drive's contents. There was a single folder. The folder was simply named 12.31. Alexander double-clicked it. Inside was one file, a video file, untitled, just the extension .mp4. He hovered the cursor over the file, right-clicked. Properties. File size, 4.7 gigabytes. Duration, 47 minutes, 22 seconds. 47 minutes. 47 minutes that would turn his life upside down. He closed Properties, double-clicked the file. The video player launched. The screen was black. Then an image appeared. The quality was good. Too good. Clearly filmed on a modern phone, maybe the latest model. Stabilization, sharpness, everything top-notch. Like shooting a movie. Only the actors didn't know they were being filmed. Or they did, and didn't care. First frames. A restaurant. A large hall decorated with streamers, balloons, tinsel. Tables covered with white cloths, champagne bottles in ice buckets. Music, some pop song, loud, rhythmic. People. Many people. Young, not so young, in evening wear. All laughing, clinking glasses, hugging. The camera panned across the room, picking out faces. There's the CEO, red-faced, sweaty, giving a toast. There's the accounting department, one already crying with emotion, another laughing. And then, her. Helen. She's sitting at a table next to someone. The person's face isn't visible. He's turned away from the camera. Only his hand is visible, resting on her shoulder. Helen is already tipsy. It shows in how she laughs, too loud, too open, head thrown back. In how her eyes glitter with an unhealthy, glassy sheen. She's wearing that black dress. One strap is already slipped, baring her shoulder. She doesn't fix it. The camera zooms in. Now you can see her clearly. Helen is saying something, her lips moving. Then she turns to the man, wraps her arms around his neck, kisses his cheek. Not a friendly kiss.
number. This kiss lingers, becomes moist, open. The man turns his head, and now Alexander sees his profile. Young. Handsome by young people's standards. Sharp chin, high forehead. Unfamiliar. Helen whispers something in his ear. He smiles, nods. Then he stands, takes her hand, leads her to the dance floor. She goes, swaying, leaning on him. The dance floor is crowded. The music is even louder, more rhythmic. The man pulls Helen close. They begin to dance. They dance close, too close. His hands on her back, on her waist, sliding lower. She doesn't resist. On the contrary, she presses against him, closes her eyes, runs her hands over his back. Alexander watches without blinking. He sits upright, hands on his knees, clenched into fists. But inside, absolute cold. As if he's watching not his wife, but a character in some movie. Only this movie is about his life. The camera follows them. They dance, then he leads her aside to a dark corner of the room where potted palms create a semblance of privacy. Other couples are there, but no one pays attention. What follows unfolds in slow motion. The man presses Helen against the wall, kisses her, first on the lips, then on her neck, her shoulder. She tilts her head back, makes a sound, half laugh, half moan. Her hands tangle in his hair. Then she starts unbuttoning his shirt. Her fingers fumble, but she's insistent. He helps her.
Then his hand finds the zipper on her dress. The zipper opens down the back. The dress parts. He slips his hand inside. She shudders, but doesn't push him away. The camera moves closer. Now their faces are visible in close-up. Her face, flushed, damp, eyes half closed. In those eyes is that long-forgotten shamelessness, the intoxicated joy Alexander hadn't seen in her for 20 years, if ever. She looks as if she's returned to her youth. But it's not the youth he remembers. It's a different, foreign, tawdry youth. She laughs, lets him pull the dress down to her waist. Then she helps him, slipping an arm out of the sleeve. The dress slides down, revealing her black lace bra. He kisses her skin. She moans. And then the worst part. She, laughing, leans in and says something. He nods. Then she, still laughing, takes them off. Those black lace panties. She does it easily, as if it were the most natural gesture. Then she hands them to him like a toy. He takes them, stuffs them in his pocket. Alexander watches his own wife, the woman he'd lived with for 30 years, the mother of his children, stand almost naked before a stranger in a dark corner of a restaurant, laughing. Laughing as if this were the most amusing adventure of her life. Then, a jump cut. Part of the recording has been edited out. Next shot. They're dressed again, but Helen's dress is crooked, her hair disheveled. She takes his hand, pulls him somewhere. They walk down a restaurant corridor, past the camera. Helen staggers. He supports her. They reach an elevator, push the button. The elevator arrives, doors open. They step in. Just before the doors close, Helen turns and looks straight into the camera. But she doesn't see it. Her gaze is glassy, empty. She smiles, a blissful, vacant smile. The doors close. The recording ends. The screen goes black. Alexander sits before the monitor, unmoving. The room is silent except for the hum of the computer. Outside, it's dark. In the apartment, silence. In the whole world, silence. He sits like that for maybe a minute, maybe 10. then slowly raises his hand, pulls the flash drive from the port, places it on the desk next to the mouse, stares at it. A small blue rectangle containing 47 minutes that destroyed 30 years. Inside him, absolute silence. The silence after an explosion. He feels no pain, no anger, nothing. Only a vacuum. Deep, airless vacuum where no emotion can exist. He thinks about what he just saw. Thinks about her laugh, her eyes. How easily she gave herself to a stranger. As if their marriage, their shared life, their memories, all of it was just a backdrop she could shed like an old dress. He thinks about the children. They saw this woman differently. A loving mother, a faithful wife. They didn't see what he saw, and probably never will, because he can't show them, can't even tell them. Some things can't be told. They can only be carried inside, like a terminal illness. He stands. His legs buckle, but he steadies himself. Goes to the window, looks out at the street, at the snow still falling, at the streetlights, at the world that continues to exist as if nothing happened. But something did happen. His world exploded. And where the house he'd built for 30 years once stood, there are now ruins. And in those ruins, he stands alone, with a flash drive in one hand and a paper bag with black lace in the other. The thought didn't come immediately. First, there was shock, then emptiness. It was over. Not, we need to talk, not, we need to sort this out, not, maybe it was a mistake. No. Over. Period. The verdict was in, and there was no appeal. He'd seen the evidence with his own eyes, seen her face, her body, her joy in betrayal. No excuses, no tears, no pleas could erase those frames from his memory. First, preserve the evidence. He copied the video file from the flash drive to his computer, then to an external hard drive in his desk drawer, then uploaded it to a cloud storage account he and Steve had once set up for family photos. Ironic. Now it held not proof of love, but proof of infidelity. Second, put the flash drive back in the bag. He did it carefully, folded the lingerie the same way. The bag looked innocent again, just a paper sack with something inside. Third, the message, not a call. A call implies dialogue, room for manipulation, tears, hysterics. A message is a verdict carved in stone. He picked up his phone, opened the chat with Helen. The last message was from him, January 1st. Helen, you okay? It was still unread. Or she'd read it and didn't reply. He began typing. His fingers moved slowly, precisely, as if striking letters on an old typewriter. I watched your performance. He paused, thought. No, not right. Too emotional. Should be drier, impersonal. He deleted it, started over. I watched your performance. Your acting was above all praise. The black lingerie suits you. Yes, that's it. Sarcasm, but cold, without hysteria. I watched your performance. Your acting was above all praise. The black lingerie suits you. Don't come back. You can pick up your things later, somehow. Leave the key under the mat. I'm changing the locks. He read it over. That was right. Short, clear, no right of appeal. Now, attach the file. He tapped the paperclip icon, found the video file on his phone,
He'd transferred it from the computer earlier, attached it. Large file. Sending would take a while. Didn't matter. He hit send. The message went. The sending circle spun. Alexander put the phone on the table, screen down. Stood, walked around the room. His heart beat steadily, calmly, as if he'd just performed a technical operation, not an emotional act. Uninstalled a harmful program, switched off a faulty appliance. A minute later the phone vibrated, once, then again. Then it rang. The screen, lying face down, glowed green. She was calling. Alexander didn't answer, didn't even look to see who it was. He knew. He left the study, closed the door. The ringing came muffled through the door, as if from underwater. He went to the kitchen, put on the kettle. His movements were mechanical, but in that mechanics was strength. The strength of a man who had made a decision and would not back down. The kettle boiled. He made tea, sat at the table. From outside the study came continuous ringing. She called again and again, as if hoping he'd change his mind if she rang long enough. But he wouldn't change his mind. He couldn't. The video was burned into his eyes, like film looped on the most terrible moment. He drank tea, staring at the wall. It was 8 p.m. She was probably still at work, or already on her way home. Saw the message, read it, tried to call. Now, probably, she was panicking, rushing for a cab, crying, wailing. He didn't care. Not one bit. After the 10th call, he went back to the study, picked up the phone. On the screen, 23 missed calls, all from her, and 5 voicemails. He didn't listen. Instead, he went into settings, found her number, tapped block. The procedure took seconds. Now she couldn't call him, couldn't text. She'd become a ghost he'd banished from his world. He put the phone back, sat at the computer, opened a browser, found a locksmith site, submitted a request for the next morning. Then found the technician's number, called, arranged it. His voice was level, businesslike. The locksmith never suspected he was talking to a man whose life had just collapsed. Everything was done. Now he just had to wait. He knew she'd come immediately. He left the study, went to the living room. The bag was still on the coffee table. He picked it up, took it to the hall, placed it on the console next to the door, so he wouldn't forget, to give to her when she came. Then he returned to the living room, sat in his chair, turned off the light, sat in the dark, staring at the streetlights outside. Inside was still emptiness. But now that emptiness was filled with silence. The silence after a battle he'd lost without even knowing he was fighting. She arrived 2 hours later. Alexander heard the taxi stop under the windows, the door slam. He didn't get up. Sat in the dark, listening. The intercom buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a desperate, long buzz, as if a finger was jammed on the button. He didn't answer. Let her buzz. Let her think he wasn't home. Though she knew he was. He was always home in the evening. That was one of the constants of their life. A minute later the doorbell rang. Short, tentative, then more insistent, then knocking. First light, then harder. "Alex!" Her voice came through the door, muffled but recognizable. "Alex, please, open up!" He was silent, sat in the chair staring into the dark. His hands lay on the armrests, fingers relaxed. "I know you're home! Your car's in the lot! Alex, open the door, we need to talk!" Her voice grew more hysterical, shrill.
He pictured her face, flushed, tear-streaked, mascara smeared. The same face as in the video, but now from fear, not passion.
It's a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Alex, for God's sake, open the door!
He heard her palms slapping the door, not hard, but desperately.
I don't know what that video is. I was set up. I don't remember anything. I was drunk, Alex, you understand. They spiked my drink.
He smiled grimly in the dark. Classic. I was drunk. As if alcohol erased responsibility. As if a drunk betrayal wasn't betrayal.
Alex, please. We've been together 30 years. You can't just throw me out like this. We have children. We'll have grandchildren.
He closed his eyes. Children. Yes, children. They were the only thing still connecting him to her. But even that bond now seemed false. Because the mother they knew and the woman on the video were two different people. And he could no longer pretend otherwise. He heard a thump, as if she'd sunk to the floor in the hallway.
Then quiet sobs turning into wailing, real, bitter weeping, not hysterics, but despair. The despair of someone who realizes they've lost everything. He sat, listening to those sobs. He opened the door, threw the bag at her with the words, "Here, take it, you might need it again," and slammed the door shut immediately. The sounds stopped. She was gone. Alexander looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. On the floor by his door lay a dark spot. Maybe her glove dropped. He opened the door, stepped into the hall. Cold air hit his face. He bent down, picked up the glove. Black, leather, expensive. Her glove. He held it a moment, then dropped it into the trash bin by the elevator. Back inside, he closed the door, turned the key, clicked the deadbolt. The sounds were loud, final, like the click of a camera shutter fixing the end of an era. He walked into the bedroom without turning on the light, lay down on the bed on his side. Helen's side was empty, the blanket neatly tucked. He lay staring at the ceiling. He didn't want to sleep, but he didn't want to be awake either. He existed somewhere between sleep and waking, suspended, where there was no pain, no joy, only weight. Toward morning, he finally fell asleep. It was a heavy sleep, without dreams. Or maybe there were dreams, but he didn't remember them. He only remembered the feeling of falling, endlessly falling into darkness. He woke to familiar sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the hall clock. But something was different. Silence. Not just absence of sound, but a qualitatively different silence. Heavy, thick, belonging only to him. He lay, listening to that silence, then sat up in bed, stretched. Joints creaked, back ached, all the same. Only now there was no one to complain to. And that was liberating. He got up, went to the bathroom, washed, shaved, looked in the mirror at his face. It was the same as yesterday. Same wrinkles, same bags under his eyes, same stubble that was now gray. But inside, a different person. Someone who'd survived an earthquake and remained standing among the ruins. He dressed, went to the kitchen, made coffee. Before he'd drunk tea, Helen drank coffee. Now he would drink coffee. A small rebellion, a small change in ritual.
While the coffee brewed, he took that paper bag from the hall table, went out to the landing, down to the first floor, and threw the bag into the outdoor trash bin. Didn't even look inside. He didn't care what was in it. That part of his life was garbage, discarded. Back inside, he drank his coffee standing at the window. Outside was a gray winter day. The snow had stopped. The sky was low, leaden. But there was a certain beauty in it. The beauty of simplicity, clarity, absence of clutter. At 9, the locksmith called. Alexander let him in, showed him the door. "What are you replacing it with?" the locksmith asked, professionally examining the old lock. "The most secure you have, so not a single unwanted soul can get in." The locksmith nodded, asked no unnecessary questions. Apparently, such orders were routine. An hour later, the job was done. Alexander paid, received 3 sets of keys. 1 went in his pocket, the other 2 in his desk drawer. Now he was safe. Now this apartment was his fortress. And in that fortress, he was alone. But that was better than being with a traitor. He sat at his desk, picked up the phone, called Steve. His son answered on the 3rd ring. "Dad, hi! Happy New Year again!" "Happy New Year, son." Alexander's voice was level, calm. "Listen, I need to talk to you about something serious." "What happened?" Steve's voice immediately became wary. "Yes, it's over between your mother and me." Silence on the other end. Then Steve asked, his voice cracking. "What? What happened? Did you have a fight?" "Not just a fight. She betrayed me. Betrayed all of us." Alexander paused to let the words sink in. "I won't go into details. They're too ugly.
But take my word for it. What she did cancels out all our years together. I can't live with her anymore. I don't want to see her." "Dad," Steve was gasping. "Are you sure? Could it be a mistake? Mom, she's not like that." "I saw proof, son, with my own eyes." Alexander's voice remained unshakable. "I won't show it to you. That would be cruel to you. But you need to know the truth. Your mother cheated on me. And not accidentally, but cynically, publicly. She didn't even try to hide it." "Oh, God," Steve whispered. "Where's she now?" "I don't know, and I don't want to know. I changed the locks. She won't enter this house again. If you want to have a relationship with her, that's your right. I won't judge you. She's your mother. But she's no longer my wife. Or my friend." Another silence. Alexander heard his son's heavy breathing. Then, "Dad, you didn't throw her out on the street, did you? It's winter." "She has a job, friends," Alexander replied coldly, "and money. She won't perish. And if she does, it's her choice. She made it when she got into bed with another man." He spoke harshly, but without malice, just stating facts. "I understand, Dad," Steve finally said. His voice was broken, but with a note of resolve. "If you say so, then it must be true. You've never lied to me. Hang in there. Call me if you need anything." "Thank you, son. Sorry you had to hear this." "It's okay, Dad. Take care of yourself." They hung up. Alexander put down the phone. The first step was taken. The children would know. He'd call Katie later when emotions had settled a bit. But the principle would be the same, truth without graphic details, to spare them the complete destruction of their mother's image, though that image was already destroyed for him forever.
He went into the living room, sat in his chair. The pale winter sun broke through the clouds, falling on the floor in a golden strip. He watched that strip, the dust motes dancing in the beam. The world continued. Life continued. Without her. He felt no relief, no joy, but he felt clean. Like after cleaning house, throwing out all the accumulated junk. Yes, emptiness remained, but it was clean emptiness. No lies, no pretense, no black lace of another man's lingerie. He thought about the stranger who had brought the bag. Who was he? The husband of the woman Helen had cheated with, or just a witness who decided truth mattered more? He felt no gratitude toward him, no hatred. That man was merely an instrument, a messenger bearing bad news. And messengers are neither thanked nor cursed. They're simply dismissed. The main lesson Alexander drew, sitting in that ray of winter sun, was simple and terrible. Infidelity isn't just a step aside. It's an atomic bomb that destroys an entire world. A world of trust, shared years, quiet evenings, joint memories. Everything turns to ash. And that explosion echoes even in the soul of the one left standing amid the ruins. An echo of pain that must be carried for years, maybe for life. But standing in one's own honest ruins is better than living in a beautiful house soaked in lies. A house can be rebuilt. From the rubble of honesty, a new life can be built. Maybe not as cozy, not as warm, but one's own. Real. He stood, walked to the window. Outside, children were building a snowman, laughing. The world went on with its life, unaware of the tragedy played out behind this window. And that was right. Tragedies should stay behind closed doors, so as not to poison others' joy. Alexander took his cup with the dregs of cold tea, carried it to the kitchen, poured it out, washed the cup, set it in the drying rack. Habitual motions, rituals. They would keep him afloat in the first, hardest days. Then solitude would become familiar. Then maybe something else would come. Or maybe not. But that no longer mattered. What mattered was that he was free. Free of lies, free of betrayal, free of the woman he'd loved for 30 years and no longer knew. He sighed, looked at his watch. It was only noon. The day was just beginning. The first day of his new life. Life after the explosion. And he took the first step, not back into the past, but forward into the unknown. With a straight back and a cold heart, in which there was no longer room for anyone's promises or black lace.